Hey music makers out there, James Russell here and welcome to another episode of Studio Hacks. Now we're a new channel, so essentially I've been a music producer for over a decade now. I'm the studio director at Heliport Studios, so I work in a big studio. I've got 3 different spaces I work out of. But this channel is mainly about trying to teach techniques and tips and tricks that you can do at home that are going to help you in your music making. And so I thought, look, the best way to start off this channel is to start at the very start. And so I'm going to do a series on which DAW is right for you. Now, DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation and is essentially the program that you record all the audio into, and it's the one that helps you actually create your music. Now, I'm going to do 5 main ones that I know of. There are others, but these are the 5 that I own and I'm going to cover. So I'm going to do Pro Tools, Ableton, Logic, Cubase and Reason. All have their own different characteristics, all have their own faults, pros and cons. So without further ado, let's get into it. Roll the tape. So today I'm going to start with Pro Tools. Now, I've been using Pro Tools for a long time, and anyone who's actually worked in big studios will be familiar with Pro Tools, because Pro Tools is essentially the industry standard right across the whole music industry. Pro Tools, it does a couple of things. Being industry standard, it works really well, especially the HD version of Pro Tools. Works really well with multi-channel converters. Pro Tools interfaces really well with things like an SSL console or an Eve console or something like that. Pro Tools also is essentially the king of audio. And what I mean by that is it's built more like a studio tape machine and mixing board than any other DAW, and has been the industry standard for such a long time. A couple of things that makes it, so let's look at the pros. A couple of things that make it is its ability to handle audio. Pro Tools is basically the king of audio, as I just said. It's built for recording audio, and it's got wonderful functionality like playlists. Now Logic and a few others do have that as well. Pro Tools has playlists, which mean you can essentially plug in a mic, record multiple takes of yourself, and then open up your playlist, because it'll keep it all under the hood. Open up your playlist, and then you can grab the best parts of each and do what's called a comp. Now, a comp is essentially creating a vocal compilation of all the best bits, so you can then start tuning it. So, and this can be done with drums, it can be done with guitars, it can be done with any of that sort of thing. So Pro Tools, playlists and the way it handles audio is just fantastic. The other one is Beat Detective. I am a big fan of Beat Detective. I just don't use Elastic Audio, and I'll go into that maybe at a later date. But Elastic Audio, what it does is it analyzes your audio files, and it lets you then sort of liquidly move your audio files via the transients to put them in time or quantize them. Now, Beat Detective is the old school way, because it's essentially chopping up the audio, and it stays what's called as phase coherent, which I know Avid or many other people claim that Elastic Audio keeps it phase coherent, but I don't believe it does. The cymbals always sound different. And look, if you're recording bands like me, and if you're recording real audio and artists playing acoustic guitars and electric guitars and vocals and drums, Pro Tools is just unbeatable. Using Beat Detective and the fact that it uses playlists and many other functionalities, Pro Tools is just amazing with audio. So that's the pro, it's the king of audio. Beat Detective and some of its editing tools are just fantastic, you don't find in other DAWs. One of the other pros, as I said, it's industry standard, and yeah, look, it's generally a pretty solid DAW, and it's the one that just about everyone uses. So if you know Pro Tools, you can essentially walk into any studio and at least know what you're doing when it comes to the interface of Pro Tools. Some of the cons. People like to joke and call it slow tools for a couple of reasons. One, because they're really slow to bring out any extra features. DAWs like Logic, Ableton even, and Cubase all try and pack their features. They know they're competing, so they're trying to pack features in to try and entice you to buy their program. For some reason, Avid's a bit like that. The industry standard, and they sort of know they've got the industry by the balls, and it's take forever to bring out, you know, just any major functionality. And a lot of the time you're paying for an update, a major update, and you're going, I'm only literally getting one extra function, like they did with 64-bit and things like that. So as far as one of the cons, yeah, look, they're pretty slow to bring out any extra functionality and new features. One of the other cons is Pro Tools is notoriously bad for working with MIDI. Now, MIDI is essentially electronic instruments and virtual instruments, and yes, I mean, basically, if a DAW needs to be all-rounder, Pro Tools is great with audio, but with MIDI it's not fantastic, although I will argue that out of all of those DAWs, I actually don't mind it. I still do a lot of MIDI work inside Pro Tools, and yeah, some of it can be a little bit clunky, but it's still pretty solid and works pretty well, and I know a lot of the functionality, so I can do that, and it gets me by. Yes, it may, I mean, Logic and a few others do have elements that are better, but Pro Tools is definitely workable. You know, it can be a little bit clunky. And the final con for Pro Tools is that it's a bit of a steep learning curve. So if you're a beginner, it can be quite hard to get your head around, whereas some of those other doors aren't. But what I would say to that, and what I say to a lot of my students, is I'm essentially, when anyone wants to apply for a job with me, I will always judge them on 3 things. Their ability to quickly pick something up and learn fast and be on the ball, their ability to roll a cable, and their ability to use Pro Tools, because they may not know all the mics and all the outboard gear or the console or any of those things, but if they've learnt Pro Tools, they can at least come in and be useful and know how to edit and at least hit the ground running. Pro Tools does have a free version, which is great to get your head around, but I would recommend, if you want to do this as a profession, I would seriously recommend looking at Pro Tools. Okay, so next week, okay, so I hope you like that, guys. That's just my quick little blurb on Pro Tools, some of the pros and cons. Next week I'm going to do Ableton. If you found that informative, if you liked it, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and drop me a comment below if you want me to cover something to do with music production. Essentially, I want to create a community here where I can create tutorials and just show you behind the scenes of what goes on in my life making music as a music producer. So I'm James Russell, and I'll catch you next episode.